Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody in between, welcome to another episode of the Chaps Chat Cats. My name is Jake, and I'm joined in the virtual studio by Sambo and Johnny. We're a part of the Hoops Crew Network, chaps. How are ya?
Pretty good. Pretty fantastic.
Warmish.
Warmish.
It is, yeah. Productive day. Pretty productive
sweat
day.
slowly making its way down your leg.
All literally talking over the top of each other at the same time. As I was talking, I could hear two echoes, and I was like, okay, the delay is not good enough.
But you got no sweat beating down the back of your legs tonight.
No sweat left after that run, son.
Nice. I've got sweat left.
Not to air my dirty laundry on the podcast, but, you know, speaking of internet, did call on Monday last week because we're having internet issues. Didn't receive a call back till Sunday after electing to wait in line. You hold your place in the queue. 6 days. I understand everyone's got a big workload, but that was a bit of a shock. 6 days to get a call back to say, yeah, we're looking into it. Anyway, to the point where I answered the phone, and they were like, it's such and such from such and such, returning your call, and I was like, this can't be the same call. Surely not. Surely not. Cannot be.
Yeah.
Cannot be. That's last week. I've moved on.
I've moved on to Starling.
This, though. Exactly. Let's crank into tonight's show. Much to listen to on the show. We're going to dive into another batch of what we want to see, the second volume of that particular product. We're going to be talking about 6 players from the Cats that we are looking at not our crystal ball, more of our dream board, I guess, our vision board, saying this is what we want to see from them in 2024. So we'll get into that. That's all part of the public show. But then for the Patreon subscribers, we are going to duck behind the Patreon curtain to talk a little bit more about our immortal moments. Which moments from the Cats dynasty we would get tattooed on our bodies if we were looking to commemorate the triumphs of the 21st century. So if you want to hear that part, if you want to watch that part of the show, go on over and subscribe to the Hoops Crew Patreon. It's $5 Aussie a month, and there's buttloads of content being churned out there. Videos from Ben and Paul. There's an article there. I've written 2 summer season of scouting reports. One on here's my first one on. I'm trying to think now. Ted Closey. And the second one, which just came out last week, was on Mitch Nevitt. So you can go on and have a read of those. But let's get into it, chaps. There's no news. So let's dive on in. Straight up.
News is good news.
No. To a quick recollection of last night's Australian Open final. Anyone have any thoughts? Good game. You enjoyed it?
Game. It was good tennis yesterday. Sort of West Indies.
Fantastic day
in Australia for the first time in 27 years. So that's always good for Test cricket. And I tell you, it was a good Test match as well. 4 days of pretty exceptional cricket. And then topped it off with last night's game, which was pretty good. I feel like towards the end, Medvedev fell in a bit of a heap in that last set. Just couldn't hold his own against Sinner in the end. Just looked too worn out from, what was it, like 25, 26 hours on the court all up.
Yeah.
Like a record in any
And
Open.
he'd had that 5-set comeback, like,
Yeah.
not the day before, but the one before that. Like, it was, it was like
But I'll tell you
48 hours previously. He played a 5-set bloody multi-hour game.
Plus, he's also up till 3:40 in the morning in another game like a week ago. So it's a pretty monstrous effort to even get to the final and to play 5 sets. So good on him. And a pretty good speech as well.
I was asleep by the time the speeches hit. I was just going to say too, like the big difference as well. He played like 24, 25 or whatever hours. The other guy had played less than 20. Sinner, I think they'd said at one point played 18 hours, so that makes it
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
he
a
only
pretty big difference,
dropped
a
one
6-hour
set
difference.
prior to the grand final, so I think he had a pretty not
Wow.
cruisy run because he played some really good players, but just physically he had a much he was in a much better spot by that time.
Yeah. I could really tell as soon as he started getting in the top, Medvedev just couldn't go with him,
Mm.
and every shot was such a effort. But we're mere mortals watching the elites play that game because after one game I would be, nah, I'm not playing anymore.
And it's
Sucks.
interesting, you bring up just mere mortals watching it. Like there was that bit in the game where Sinner turned to his coaches and was like, raised his hands and kind of went so close, like mouthed so close to them. And the commentators were sort of surmising that he feels like he's really close to cracking it. And that was right before he did just start to get on top. And you just kind of go from my point of view, I didn't see anything
No.
like I didn't really see anything different. Then you kind of go, I wonder, like, what is it that he's, like that. They obviously the physical stuff you're talking about, John, too. But I think tennis is one of those games that I love to watch, but I'm aware that I watch it from a very
Outsiders view.
detached point of view, where I don't really like the tactics and
Yeah.
the shifts and the things that they're changing, the way they're reading it. I've got no idea about because he just kind of turned around and went, I think I'm close to cracking it, and then he did, and you kind of go, what was happening there? What did I not
Yeah.
see?
It amazes me that they can come from 2 sets down after being beaten pretty easily in the first 2 sets and just go, "This is what I gotta do." On the fly without the help from the coaches, it's all themselves. It's incredible what those tennis players can do.
It was like he just needed like a look in on Medvedev's serve, and he got it at it was at the end of the second set. He actually broke him before the end of that set, and then once the third one started, it's like, okay, I can do this, which I think made a big difference. It's just like that thing of like, I'm not serving like terribly. If I can break that guy's serve, then I'm in it. And yeah, it's pretty impressive for a young player. Big
That's
stage, big
Italian
moment.
as well.
Crazy. I almost couldn't believe that.
Yeah,
Is
I
that
know.
men's or women's?
Men's or women's.
Yeah.
First Italian in the Oz Open final.
But then I was trying to rack my brain and go, oh, but that player, and I really couldn't think of any who's stuck in my brain as like, oh, well, that Italian player would have won, or I
There's been a
had a good
few
day on the sports.
female Italian players, but they never got to the finals.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Maybe
In
next year.
Australia,
Do
that
you know
is.
what? Next off season, we should the chaps chat tennis or something like that. Wouldn't be a terrible idea. That'd be a good way to fill 2 weeks of the dead period. We just become a tennis podcast. 2 weeks.
Why not?
Why not? Indeed.
Well, if
I
all our
watched the
listeners
Cadell
tell us they don't want
Evans.
to hear that, that would be a good reason not to do that.
Exactly. That's true.
Yeah, they're like, no, we're gonna punch out, chaps. Punch out. The Cadell Evans Great Ocean Road race. I watched that. First time I've ever watched a full cycling race. Absolutely loved it. And
Nice.
my plan now is next year I'm gonna go down and watch in person. Gonna pick a spot, gonna go and sit and watch in real life. It was really fun. Good race. Watched some women's soccer. I watched Wellington Phoenix v Canberra. I watched South African women beat the Aussie women in the T20. First time South Africa's women have beaten the Aussies in cricket. And like you, Johnny, I watched a bit of the Windies in Australia. So yeah, good day of sport. Let's jump in. Let's jump into what we want to see. What we want to see. Last week,
Premiership,
Johnny and
obviously.
I started the. That's right, flag definitely. Tonight we're gonna take it in turns. Sambo, you're gonna lead us off here.
Oh,
And the
shit.
first player want to know what you want to see is Max Holmes. What do you want to
Is it
see
Holmes?
from the
Holmes.
speedster Max Holmes? Hard L.
Well, I mean, I didn't do this segment last week, so I feel like I got no sort of base study for like how long we talk
Well,
for, what kind of things we're
We
going. But
just
that
assumed you'd
suits
listen
me.
to the
That suits
pod.
me.
So.
I can just pretend I'm setting the tone here. This has never happened
exactly.
before.
Exactly.
Look, from Max Holmes, I would. It's tough because I don't want to talk about it as if he was disappointing last season or something. But I would really like to see Max Holmes kind of take the 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 ball, the games, and the season by the scruff of the neck a little bit, and really just kind of reach that sort of uh pinnacle that we felt like he was going to last year. I don't think he had a as I said, I don't think he had a bad year last year by any stretch. I think it like a lot of the team, he had his ups and downs last year. But I think that the biggest, most consistent thing that I would like to see him put to bed was just that he just didn't quite look like he had that killer instinct, that real kind of consistent, um, uh, just instinctive, um, knowledge of what he could do and what he was meant to do. And I think again that sort of permeated through a lot of the team, that there was this sense that maybe we were overthinking things a little bit, weren't operating on that killer instinct that we'd been honing over the previous seasons. So yeah, it's pretty simple, but that's basically it. I'd just like to see. I'm not talking about goals or disposals or anything like that. I'm not really focusing on any particular output that I want to see. I just want to see him approach the game in that really fiery, hungry, unstoppable kind of manner that I feel like he had in 2022.
Nice. I like it.
I love.
I,
I love that.
I agree with it. Absolutely. See that.
What do you,
See
I was just gonna.
2022 Max Holmes come back to the game, because 2023 Max Holmes was just a bit off his usual pace.
It's interesting. Like, um, and as usual on the pod for shits and gigs, like to try and like quantify it in my head of like what was lacking for me, because I would agree, like it felt like a down year, and it's one of those things for me where it's a reason why you have to both watch the games. You can't just look at the numbers, because statistically he averaged career high disposals. So to start with, he played the most games in a season he's ever played. Played 21 games last year, which is the most of his 3-year career. He only, and in my head, he missed this massive chunk of the season, but in fact, he played rounds 1 through 10, missed a few games in the middle, came back, played round 14 through to the close of the season. And while he was doing that, averaged 19 touches, which was 3.5 more than his previous season average, 4.2 tackles, which was nearly up 1.5 tackles on his previous best. Averaged 4 inside 50s, up from 2.8 the season before. 3.2 clearances, up on 1.4, which is his previous career best. Like, if someone could go back at us and say, hey, statistically, but there was definitely something watching the game where you were like, it's almost a bit like what, Sinner. I'm almost like,
Mm.
I'm almost cracking the code, but it just wasn't quite like. Are there specific like situations you want to see him put in more or find himself in more? Like, what would be a key indicator for you that it's like, there it is? That's like that Max Holmes that looked like he was about to blow it open in 2022 before he got injured. Are there like, key things that you'd be looking for?
I mean, the biggest one is just that breaking away from the pack that we would see him do in 2022. Like get either
Yeah.
pick the ball up or have it fed to him from someone that's in the thick of it, and just able to like put on that extra burst of speed, and then also put on the afterburners after that, and just leave people in the dust. But it's not necessarily that he didn't do that or he didn't try that. It's as I said, that's why you're kind of sort of backing up what I said. It's not like about a
Mm.
statistical output or anything like that. I think he got his hands on the ball quite a lot, and he did do some good things. But it was just that it was. I feel like in 2020, in the previous 2 seasons, I think, prior to last season.
Mhm.
I think he was one of those players where we went, he's got like so much will. He's got so much want to do the right thing. And sometimes he just does some crazy, out of left field stuff that does not work. Like he'll run through it. I think it was 2021 season. If I remember, or maybe it was early 2022. Where he like ran through into the edge of the 50 to have a shot for goal. And it was like one of the worst shots for goal I've ever like I've ever seen on the run. And I remember us talking about that specific moment on the pod and kind of talking about like you love to see him try. And I think it was him too that shanked it from like right in the goal square, wasn't it? On the run, like
so,
kind
yeah.
of like he he started to get too fast for his own legs. He couldn't quite keep, and by the time he kicked it, he like kicked it out on the full from the goal square or something. And that's kind of what what I want, like a little bit more. Like I wouldn't even bemoan a few blunders, a few mistakes, a few times when you're just like, nah, I should have laid it off early and he got tackled and done holding the ball. Like I kind of want to see that. I want to see him like that's his thing. I think like his leg speed and his and he's just kind of like that dare and will to go is the thing that I want to see him not squash too much. Like I think maybe he was a little too worried about like getting it perfect every time, and then the opportunity for perfection doesn't raise itself too often. So if you're only going when the time is perfect, you're not going to go that often. So I kind of see it like to see that. Like that's the sort of thing, Jake, that I'd like to see. I'd like to see him breaking away. I'd like to see him getting caught trying to break away. I'd like to, see him not pick up the ball because he's run too fast and he's left it behind and have to scramble back for it. Yeah, I'm not necessarily looking for that perfection. I want to see that thing where you're just like, oh, he was, if he had got away there, they were screwed. Specifically that I think is the sort of stuff I like to see.
Nice.
I like it. I just quickly did some math. So, and this is one where, so it's just disposal count. In 6 of the 9 wins he played in 2023, he had 20 or more touches. So 2/3 of the time he went 20 or more touches in victories that he played in. He only had 20 or more touches in 4 of the 11 losses he played in. So it's interesting. I'm not putting all of that on him. One thing you could, and you'd have to go back and watch game by game to know, but like, did his lack of impact at times have to do with the fact that we didn't have a lot of primary ball winners to get it out to him in space? And in those games where we're losing, he's not able to impact the game because we're just not feeding him enough of the footy. That could be a fair question too, because I don't know about you boys, but like my preference is someone like an Atkins gets it, hands it out to space to Max Holmes, running away. I don't need him in and at it.
Hopefully we have Cam Guthrie back for a full season who is skilled at getting in there and feeding it out to a player on the wing to like Max Holmes or Jack Bowes or someone like that who can feed it out to another explosive player who can get it inside 50 quickly and efficiently.
Well, that's a nice transition, Johnny, because the next player I'm going to ask you about is what we want to see, what you want to see from Cam Guthrie. What is it? You've started it there. What do you want to see from him?
Ideally, a full season with no injury. That'll be a nice start. But I'd like to see him get back to his 2022 season. I feel like 2023 was still really good for him. He started off really well, did everything good to help the team get the wins and whatnot. But once he had that injury and never came back, there was definitely a hole there that the Cats just couldn't fill for the rest of the season. And that's where Max Holmes sort of started to suffer a bit himself as he was trying to extract the ball, which he's not really there to do. He's, as we just said, he's there to be the wingman, to do what Isaac Smith did. Run down the wing, get the ball fed to him from other players. And that's what I reckon Cam Guthrie is really excellent at. a lot of the times when the Cats are going forward, it's Cam Guthrie who starts the chain. We saw it against Collingwood in the qualifying final in 2022. He set up the goal that Max Holmes got. He's done a lot more throughout the grand final, throughout his entire career. He's really built for that role. So I'd like to see him play that role a bit more this year. Do what Joel Selwood did, be in the coalface at the start, get in there and try and get it out to like a Dangerfield, who then can also get it out to Holmes. And I think he will succeed because he has succeeded at it. And then after that, he's got free reign to move up and use his really good kicking skills or tackling ability to help the team further on. So, yeah, I just like him to focus more in around that centre ground area and be the extractor to then open up more of the young guys to be able to feed the ball inside 50 to the big forwards.
I love that. Sorry, I was just making sure my mic was actually unmuted. Um, just to illustrate like what his impact can be in 2021, 2022. So the year was what we made a prelim and we made the grand final and won it. He averaged 26.6 disposals over, like if you add those seasons together, 1,280 disposals in 48 games at an average of 26.6. Now, he only had 22.3 per game in 2023, but he only played 6 games as well. Another area across those 2 seasons is he averaged 4.6 clearances per game. We didn't have anyone get anywhere near that 26.6 disposal average. I think Tom Stewart was our leading disposal getter per game, I think.
As a defender as well.
Stewie, so like to have Guthrie back, I think would be like absolutely massive.
And it'll just lighten the load that Dangerfield has to carry at the moment because he is the most senior guy in that centre. He's got Bowes, he's got Bruin, and hopefully Jhye Clark, but they're all still extremely young. They're not going to be able to step up in big games and do what Cam Guthrie's been able to do that he had to build up to get to. Like I still remember
hopefully
Cam
Sean
Guthrie.
Manor.
Sean Manor, exactly. Yeah, that's a good point.
Mm.
So, yeah, I feel like it could be a really good year for Cam Guthrie if he stays fit and healthy, which, I believe he will be able to. It was just one of those really bizarre injuries. One that just seems such a, on the injury front, just seems like such a simple fix. Like it's a toe. What could go wrong with with your big toe? Obviously, a hell of a lot can go wrong with your big toe. So whenever I hear a toe injury again, I'll be like, oh shit. Let's hope it's not Cam Guthrie's extent, but I feel like he'll have a good year. And if he's able to get back to his 2022 season, it's really going to help the Cats and it's really going to lift up the whole team as well.
Love it a lot. Sambo, do you have any thoughts on Cam Guthrie?
I agree. Second all of that.
And it's like another player too, like clearances, the not counting last season, clearances 4 per game, 3.8 per game, 5 per game, 4.3 per game, and tackles 4.9, 4.1, 4, 4.9. It's just so valuable, especially in like last year. We felt that so keenly. Agree totally with that point. All right, what we want to see for me, let's talk about Toby Conway. And it's nice. There's 2 players we're going to talk about here back to back, myself and then Sambo, and they play the same position at the Cats, both at opposite ends of their careers. So I thought it was probably a good way to dovetail them together. Toby Conway obviously talked about a lot, like his injuries. He's had an injury-marked start to his career. But when he's been on the field, like in the VFL, he's lit it up. Last season, He only managed 3 games in the VFL, rounds 17, 18, and 22. His last 2 games against the Lions, who, by the way, are a really good team, won 34 hitouts. The next week against GWS Giants in a really impressive win. He had 21 touches, 26 hitouts, 5 marks. And obviously came in for that last game of the season in the AFL against the Dogs and performed so well to start that match that they had to force a tactical change where they ripped Tim English out of the middle and inserted former Fremantle Docker, whose name escapes me.
Lobe. Lob.
Rory Lobb. Yep, that's the one. Lobb. Yeah, I'm with you.
Earlobe.
I would have gone with it. There probably was a Fremantle player called Loeb at some point. And so, like, what I want to say, it's a little bit like Guthrie. Health. Because I think from what I watched of Toby Conway in the VFL last season, only limited sample size, admittedly, his tap work's too good. He's too good for that level. His ruck skills are too good. You can tell he's been working with quality coaching. You can tell he's got natural talent. He already uses his body really well to maneuver in ruck contests. Going back and watching 2007, some games from that the last few weeks, watching the influence someone like Brad Ottens has, where not only is he massive, but he's mobile enough that he can just drift around the ground and be a problem at either end. Like, he can float across and take defensive marks. He can go forward and take attacking marks. Toby Conway has shown he can do that. He did that in patches in the VFL this season. And as I said, just his pure ruck work is great. So it's health for me. I want to see Toby Conway get a mostly uninterrupted season, because for me, it's sort of a logical progression. If Toby Conway is uninjured, he's going to naturally just push his case to be in the team because he's just that good at playing his position. Obviously, he needs to develop his experience and that sort of thing. But again, that can only be done if he's healthy. So for me, it's health above all things. And if that means we have to like load manage a little bit, where it's like, all right, he's played a month of VFL footy, we're going to give you a week off just to make sure you're absolutely right as rain. I'm fine with that, but I just want to see him be healthy and able to play the majority of the season. That's what I want to see from Toby Conway.
Nice.
Love it.
Did you guys like his debut against the Dogs?
I did.
Like, I thought it was promise.
Yeah,
Big
so
promise.
much.
Big promise for big Toby Conway.
Yeah, I think to influence the game
Big
and the
TC.
opposition so dramatically is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, let's piggyback this Sambo into your second player. Rhys Stanley. What do you want to see from Rhys Stanley in 2024? I thought it's good to be able to do the ruckman together. And yeah, what do you want to see from the big man in 2024?
I am somewhat of a sentimentalist, so part of me is in Stanley's corner more so than Conway's. Like, part of me would like what I want to see is him have like a record-breaking career best year, end on a high, never get pushed out of the team. But that's that's not my answer. But that is actually what my realistic approach. My realistic approach, really, what I actually want is, and this I think not many players in the Geelong team are in this category for me from last year, and I don't think he necessarily would even be in this category for many other people talking about Stanley. But more or less, I just want more of the same from Stanley this year. Like, I don't think he embarrassed himself at all. Like, at this point in his career, I think he acquitted himself really well. I think he, like, if you look statistically, he's about middle of the road for his career in most meaningful stats all year. Last year, just sort of as far as like his marks were a little bit low, and I think his like his contested possessions were really down. No, sorry, it was the uncontested possessions were a bit down, but like his contested possessions, his hit outs, his tackles, his goals, his disposals, kicks and handballs, it's all kind of like around about like within a place or two of just his average of his career. And if we've got Conway pushing and Conway's looking the way he's looking, I don't really have any logical, non-sentimental reason to want much more from Stanley this year. If he can just keep acquitting himself that well, do what he does well, and give us another season of that. But probably with less game time, realistically, is what we're looking at. That's kind of all I really want for him. I think he stood up in some big moments. I think he took some really good intercept marks last year when in some moments where we were really looking like we were in trouble. When people were pushing it was sometimes him that would be the one to come across and take some really sturdy marks and slow it down a little bit. Yeah, like I think it's probably a pretty boring answer, but I honestly don't really want much more.
Well, he averaged a career high in hitouts, only slightly, and again, it's per game, but 28.3 hitouts, ever so slightly better than his previous 28.1.
So is that an average?
I'm like, yeah, average, but not totals. Obviously, he's not. He wasn't anywhere near, but I'm kind of with you. Like, he's a valuable player to have because he's still an upgrade, and this isn't like meant to be nasty or mean, but like he's still an upgrade. There's a reason Segler didn't force him out of the side, for instance. He's a value add instead of having it like, okay, you've got Segler or you've got Toby Conway. Like, we've got Stanley or Conway, and that's a situation I like. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't expect rationally for it to be anything out of the box.
So he had a
Obviously,
career.
his health was impacted.
He had a career high, like an individual game. I think he had the most. Is that right? The most hitouts in a single game.
42.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. He had one higher. One higher in 2019. He had 45 against Port Adelaide. Sorry, missed that one. But anyway, second career high for a an individual performance. Go on. Oh, you were talking about injury. Go on.
Yeah. Like I think you like he also was injury interrupted. If you look rounds 1 to 5, he played 4 games. He played round 1, round 2, round 4, round 5. Didn't play again till week 15 or round 15.
Yeah, did he play a total of like 12 or 13 games or something? Yeah.
So it's amazing how many of these players that we talk about, it's like, health. It'd be great to have health. Like, sort of makes you realize what you're sort of up against last year. But I'm with you. I think there's going to be a natural progression point at some point this year or next where you would hope that Conway makes himself the auto selection. But if that's because he forces his way into the team rather than having to step in for an injured Stanley, that's what you'd prefer, is just a natural thing. Yeah. I don't know about you, chaps. I don't see a situation where we play both in the one team.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, there is a situation, sorry, like as in if maybe you're like desperate for like key forwards or key backs or something, you're like, well, we put both ruckmen in and rotate them through, but because we've got, Hawkins and Cameron out or something like that, and they can spend some time up forward because we need the bodies. But with Blixarves there and DeConing and Jack Henry, who have all rucked.
Can't see them both playing. I can see them giving Conway a go here and there. But at this point, it's with me, Stanley's still the lead ruck, not just for his rucking work, but also for all the extra work he does around the ground. He's very agile, very mobile, and helps the defense out massively during the games. And
I can kind of see them playing both when they're testing Conway out a little bit. Like, I think if you had them both there, I mean, Stanley would be pretty handy. If you're, they seem to be really intent on pushing Stewart forward, and they also are pretty intent
Mhm.
on dropping Cameron back. Like Cameron likes to roam. I don't think Stanley's the worst person you could have to fill in for a portion of a game, either or
Mhm.
both of those roles alternating. And then if Conway's just not hitting it, then you've got Stanley on the list and he's out there,
Sure.
and you fold him in there, like especially earlier in the season when there's not much on the line, but you still like the points, like versus just putting Conway out there and not having another ruck option. Um,
Mm,
just for the sake of argument, I guess the way that they seem to be
totally.
talking about Stewart and the way they've been using Cameron, you kind of go, I guess they might like a extra tall to float up and back.
Yeah,
No, I think that's a pretty logical,
that's
pretty
a fair
logical
point.
take. It's a fair point. It's a good point by you. All right,
Absolutely.
Johnny, your last
Occasionally.
player. Tom
Ooh,
Hawkins.
Biggie Hawkins.
Everyone's like, oh, it's a pretty, he's near the end. Still, but he kicked 49 goals in 20 games, 49, 26.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not his.
his marking numbers were down.
Yeah,
Even if you look at average, it was his lowest marks since 2013 per game. If you look at his average,
yeah.
and as we talked about, supply and all that
Supply,
sort of thing was probably also down. What do you want to see,
injury as
Johnny,
well.
from Tommy Hawkins?
I want to see 2023 Hawkey back. Obviously, when he just dominated that forward line with Jeremy Cameron and Gary Rowan. And I think they have the absolute ability and the strength to do that again. And I'd like to see Hawkins play more in that goal square. He's good on his burst leading, and as we all know, he's got a big frame, so he's not the best at chasing down targets inside the forward line. He's not the best at, putting the pressure on, but he can still do it. He still puts that effort in. But I would like to see him be like that center square monster who just not the center square, the goal square, sorry. Goal square monster that stays in the goal square, goes those short bursts, leads out, and if the ball doesn't go to him, then it doesn't go to him. But he's gonna drag one or two defenders away from Jeremy Cameron, Gary Rowan, Oliver Henry, and whoever else is gonna be Stengel as well. So if he can just play that like a foil to other guys, and he'll still boot like 40 plus, maybe 50 plus goals this year if he's fully fit, ready to go. Because a fit Tom Hawkins is still extremely strong. He can still ragdoll anyone out of the way. And if they don't go with him, then the Cassidy's going to kick to him and he's going to take an easy mark. So, yeah, I'd like to see him play that more traditional big forward, full forward player where he just starts in the goal square and then makes a quick lead. They either kick it to him or they don't, and he's going to drag, as I said, one or two defenders towards him because they just have to go to him because if they don't, then it just leaves open a Jeremy Cameron, who's also like an elite forward
Mm.
player who had an outstanding 2022 until he got absolutely poleaxed by Rowan unintentionally.
Mm.
But yeah, I think that's what I like to see. Just him get back to his natural best and just be that big scary guy in the forward line that no one wants to go to, but someone has to.
So much of this stuff too, like you're always like having to couch or caveat in like if the midfield can, because like an interest,
Yeah,
like just to talk about the tackling thing, Johnny. You're saying you can't tackle as well anymore. That shows out in the stats. If you look at per game average, 0.9 tackles per game last season. It's the lowest total of his career.
mm,
There's not a season in his career where he's been lower than one tackle per game. And it's his lowest since 2013. The other
he's not
thing that's interesting
he's
is
not
his
in a team
inside
to tackle.
50s.
So yeah,
No, but it was definitely something like 2022, 1.5 tackles,
yeah,
2021, 2 tackles per game. Like he's been averaging 1.5 to 2.5 tackles like
it's
the
definitely yeah,
last almost 8 seasons. So it's definitely was
definitely.
noticeable last year. And the other thing I thought which showed was his inside 50s. He only averaged 1.1 inside 50s per game, which was a career low. So probably not again getting him up the ground in situations to take marks and then put the
Yeah,
ball inside 50 as often as you
yeah, 'cause that's
maybe
another thing.
would
He's
expect from him.
he also knows how to kick to a leading forward. That's another thing I keep forgetting. He's
Yeah.
such a elite kick when it goes inside 50. Yeah, look at some of his other stats, like 10.7 disposals, which was down like to 1.3% or whatever it was.
Lowest since
Kicks
2015.
kicks was 7.3. Goals was still elite, 2.5 throughout the season. Goal
Mm,
accuracy 54.4, which is below his normal average. Marks was below his average. So yeah, it was just a season where he
mm.
just had a below average season. But knowing Tom Hawkins and the consummate professional that he is, he'll definitely be looking at those stats and looking at his season and going, how can I improve? How can I get better? And he'll definitely be working on all that. So
Yeah.
I reckon, especially with this off long off season that the team has, they've got the extra time to hone those skills, hone those issues that they had last year to really fix those tiny issues. And they are only tiny, I reckon. I don't think there's a real lot wrong with the Cats that went wrong with the Cats in 2022. A lot of it was injuries. A lot
Mm,
of it was just not playing at the high enough standard in certain games against certain teams. And I don't think it's going to
mm.
take much for this team to get back up in that top eight. And if Tom
Tend to
Hawkins does
agree. And I
another,
think they've made,
okay,
yeah, I tend to agree. Like, I think that it can turn around a lot quicker than a lot of people probably expect. Um,
and if
and again, I think a lot of the problems with Hawkey was symptomatic of injury, but also of the midfield issues we had. The supply
yeah,
just wasn't as often or as good. And
and
as
if both,
good is probably the key word because I think actually we averaged quite a high amount of inside 50s, but probably not the quality.
and if Hawkins does play another 2022, then that's going to lift the team because he is an exceptional leader as well, and he will lift that team on his broad shoulders, and he will help carry it alongside Dangerfield and Stewart. So if he starts really well, the rest of the competition we'll have to look at because I always think that Tom Hawkins plays well, the Cats play well.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. 100%. We move to the last player of the evening, unless Sam has any more to add on Hawkins.
No.
Jhye Clark is the last player. What we want to see. Um, uh, the tendency here would be to say health, because he was another one that got injured. Played 6 games in the VFL last season in his debut campaign for the Cats, made his appearance, and then got injured. In the AFL, came on as the sub in the Sydney game, I think it
Nah,
was. Was that the
Richmond game.
drawn game against Sydney? The
No, I came
Richmond
under
game.
Richmond. I was
Um,
I was there. I remember. I saw it happen. I was like, no.
no. So, Jhye Clark, of the injury, I want him to be healthy is the obvious one. So instead of that, I'm going to focus on what I want to see from him, making the assumption that he's out there and he gets more of a crack on the field this year. And this goes whether it's VFL or AFL. So we'll start in the VFL. Last year in the VFL, had 1 game of 20 or more disposals. So it went 13 disposals on debut against Carlton, 9 against the Gold Coast, 16 against Box Hill, 17 against Werribee, 29 against Coburg, and then 12 against Southport. And then he didn't play another VFL game all season. I want to see him start consistently finding the ball a bit more. You know, I think the Cats are going to want to see, unless they totally break type of how they normally play these things, they're going to want to see him able to dominate at the level below before they give him the nod. I don't think it's a coincidence that he had that 29 touch game against Coburg, had a quieter outing against Southport, but from memory, he only played a half against Southport. I'm sure he only played the first half and then got pulled. So it was something along those lines. And then debuted at AFL level not long after. I don't think that's a coincidence that they thought he was building towards something, and then he gets the injury. So what I want to see is more 20-plus disposal games. I want to see him keeping that tackle count up, keeping that clearance count up, just getting involved, because the way I think of Jhye Clark is, again, one of those like primary ball winners. He doesn't have that like Max Holmes speed on the outside. What you'd be hoping Jhye Clark blossoms into is a hard, tough, primary ball winner. And so what I'd like to see in his second season at the club is those disposal numbers creeping up. And I think, honestly, with where they took him in the draft, a little bit like Toby Conway, if he's healthy and he's playing up to his ability, he will find his way into the AFL side. Like, that'll just take care of itself. So he's got to take care of his business in the VFL. And as basic as it sounds, disposal numbers for me would be a big one. I'd like to see him averaging closer to 20 plus disposals per game in the VFL. Particularly, I think, because Jhye Clark, who was in the VFL and was like the primary ball winner, isn't there this season. I think he might have moved to WA or over to Adelaide. I can't remember. I'm sort of just pulling that out my ass, but I don't think he's there this year. If he is, then just ignore this. But that'd be a key indicator for me. 20-ish disposals per game in the VFL, and I think that goes a long way for him seeing the field a lot in the AFL. And who knows, he might get in there. He might train the house down, perform really well in the preseason. They might just throw him in. But I think that's part of the plan of bringing like Sean Manor in, is it's like we don't have to rush Jhye Clark in. You'll lose some experienced bodies. We'll bring another experienced body in. Even what's his name? Who's the other guy they brought in last year? Mitch Hardy.
Yes.
You know, so you bring in some experienced dudes ahead of him, so there's not that immediate pressure. So yeah, 20-plus disposals in the VFL. That's as simple as I'm going to make it for Jhye Clark.
I like it. I will agree. I think that's a very good baseline to start his career in his second year at the Cats. Yeah, I won't say much more because I don't watch the VFL as closely as you. Saw half a game in AFL, but yeah, I reckon if he can get those disposal numbers up, as you say, then he'll find his way in, and we'll see how he is in the AFL. But as you said, there's no rush. We've got that covered pretty well for the Cats.
Agree. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for supporting the podcast. We are now going to move over into the Patreon part of the show to talk about our immortal moments. Again, talk about key moments from the Cats' 21st dynasty that we would get immortalized in our skin if we were so inclined. Images and iconic moments that capture the vibe of the times. So if you want to hear that, go on over, subscribe to the Patreon. It's $5 Australian per month. So much bonus content over there. As I said, videos, part of the summer series with the hoops, folks, the behind the play interviews, scouting reports that I'm writing, additional content in these Chaps episodes. There's lots of stuff to get involved in over there on the Patreon. So you can go and subscribe, $5 Aussie bucks a month. Make sure you hit subscribe on YouTube, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all those places. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, go Cats!
Go Cats.
Go Cats!